We've all seen the grainy videos and out-of-focus photos. Not the most convincing proof. Yet something primal inside convicts us these could be real. Tonight we'll hear multiple reports. Each one individually would be a story to tell around the campfire. Dogman sightings, white crawlers, and an unknown entity that some describe as looking like heat off of hot pavement. Wrapped up in one video, and you've got cryptid encounters that made Dogman sit. The moment I saw it, I felt a mix of fear and disbelief. Cryptids have always been my thing. I ate up every book on the subject I could when I was a kid. We didn't have the internet back then, so coming across more information was hard. A lot of it was schoolyard tales. When I got older, I dove into all the videos on Bigfoot and Beast of Bray Road. I'm not gullible, and I know there have been lots of fake claims. Still, I think there's something out there that hasn't been explained yet. I've never gone looking for one because I'm no cryptozoologist. I'm simply a man with a passion for the unsolved and mysterious. In fact, I'm pretty skeptical, I'd say. So when I tell you I saw something, please don't take it lightly. This happened a few years ago. I took a vacation to Ohio. Not a usual getaway spot, I know, but I went to visit some friends I hadn't seen since college. They took me to the Taft Museum, the zoo, this cool carousel, and a couple of other places. The weekend after I arrived was a 3-day. My friends planned to take me to Zaleski State Forest for some hiking, and then a day or two checking out the small towns around the area for little trinkets. The drive up was nice, and the city gradually gave way to forest and fields. We got to Nelsonville and checked into our rooms, then had a quiet little dinner. The next day, we packed up to go for our hike. My friends had been here before and told me they had found smaller trails barely anyone uses that had some interesting things on them. We got to the trails around 9 a.m., started off on the big ones that are well marked. Then around 10, we went down a branch that barely looked like a trail at all. Only way to tell was that the underbrush hadn't grown back yet, but otherwise you would have missed it. There were some old hand tools and rusted chains, left from when loggers used to work back there. A little further down the trail, the air shifted. We were in a hollow, and I'm not prone to anxiety, but there was a quiet unease about the place that put me on edge. Sounds seemed to echo more than they should have down there. One of my friends wanted to check out a little cave they noticed, so we pulled out our flashlights and looked inside the opening. Almost instantly, I regretted that decision. There were animal carcasses strewn about just past the mouth of the cave. A smell hit us about 2 feet in. There must have been a kill festering further in because it smelled like rotted meat, but also mixed with something sweet I couldn't place. After about 5 seconds, we noped out of there. The whole vibe had changed after that, and we weren't enjoying the hike anymore. That feeling of things closing in continued even once we got out of the hollow. Around noon, we stopped for lunch and assessed our situation. None of us felt comfortable anymore, and we couldn't place why. Both of my friends said they felt like we were being followed. I didn't feel that way exactly, but my chest had been tight ever since going into that cave. We had just decided to start heading back when we all heard a twig snap somewhere around us. Then a flock of birds took to the air. The sudden burst of action nearly gave me a heart attack, since I was already sitting on a razor's edge. Both my friends said something had moved behind me. When I asked what it was, they said it was too fast to see clearly. We packed up the rest of lunch. We didn't even finish. None of us were very hungry, and we started to head back. Probably was how paranoid my friends were acting, but I started to feel like we were being followed as well. It took about 30 minutes to make it back to the hollow where the cave was. Not a single one of us wanted to go back through there, so we hiked off trail around it instead. That's when I saw a flash of something black out of the corner of my eye. I looked, but it was gone by the time my head turned. 100 yards from the cave, and that same smell hit me in the face again. I don't think the wind would have blown it that far. Further on, I noticed the forest was silent. On the way in, it had been teeming with life. Now you could hear a pin drop. Something growled, and I remember making a joke about how someone's stomach didn't like us missing lunch. My friends chuckled, and then said it wasn't either of them. The growl happened again about a minute later. There are no large predators in this forest. Maybe coyotes or bobcats, but nothing that would make the sound we heard. We all stopped and looked around. There was nothing there. My ears were straining, and I started to hear the crunch of leaves like someone walking. I couldn't place the direction they were coming from. My friends must have heard it too, because one of them said it sounds like we have company. The mix of anxiety and that feeling of something pressing on us got to be too much. Without a word, we all bolted. Sure, we all hike, but hiking is different from running. I think we got 100 yards before we were out of breath and grabbing our sides. You'd have thought after the run and the distance between us and the cave, the smell would have died by then, except it hadn't. If anything, that rotten meat smell was stronger. There we were, bent over, huffing and puffing, when the growl happened one more time. Then another flash of black, but this time it was close, maybe 20 feet from us between two trees. Like gazelles on the savannah being chased by a lion, our flight instinct kicked in without a second thought. Only this time we ran in different directions. I went left, one friend went right. The third went straight down the way we were going. Maybe it was for the best we split up, because whatever was chasing us had to decide who to go after. Unfortunately, it went after me. I still couldn't see it, but I could hear it crashing through the brush behind me. My legs were getting weak, and I was tripping over branches. My lungs burned something fierce, and my lips were numb. No lie, I was about to give up and let whatever was chasing me have me. I could barely take another step. Only that's when I realized the sound behind me had stopped. I slowed down, then stopped. Looking around, I didn't see anything back the way I'd come. The smell was still in the air, so I wasn't sure if it had left or not. After a few minutes of catching my breath, I started back the way I came. 2 steps forward and I heard the growl. It was deeper this time, and I could feel it in my legs. I froze, took a couple of steps back, and the growl stopped. The message was received loud and clear. This thing didn't want to eat us. It wanted us out of its territory. I turned to walk away, but took one last look back. That's when I saw it. It had been sitting in a bush, so I didn't get a clear look. What I did see confirms a lot, though. I caught a profile of its head. It was big, bigger than a coyote. I'd say more like the size of a bear, but it had a snout that was longer than a bear's, but still shorter than most dogs, so somewhere in between. It had fur, and while I didn't see it stand on 2 legs, it looked long and lean, not round like most bears. I walked until I hit a trail, which took about an hour or 2. I'm not sure because my head was swimming with thoughts. Once on the trail, I ran into a group of people. They pointed me to where I had started at 9 that morning. It was now 4 in the afternoon. Both my friends were at the car and about to call the rangers, but they were relieved to see me. I told them what I had seen. It's not that they didn't believe me, but I think they didn't know what to make of it. The rest of my trip was cool, but nothing compared to finally seeing a cryptid in the wild. All the shopping and restaurants felt dull after that. In no way do I ever plan to go looking for a cryptid again. The fear was like nothing else I'd ever experienced. I'd rather ride a roller coaster, and I hate roller coasters. That sighting proved to me that there are things we don't know about, in a way that comforts and frightens me at the same time. 15 years ago, when I was 15, I was staying at a friend's house. His name was Marcus. It was a Friday, and we were staying up late playing Halo Reach. It was a cold December night, but a girl had texted him saying she wanted him to sneak over and hang out. I didn't want to go and be a third wheel, but he convinced me it would be fun. So around midnight, we snuck out the window in his basement. The girl's house was a mile or so away. I was only wearing jeans and a jacket. My thighs went numb in a couple of minutes, and halfway there I couldn't feel my toes. We lived in the suburbs, but there were these alleyways we take as shortcuts. We went down one and were about halfway down when a light went off in one of the backyards. It was a floodlight and lit the whole place up. There was a shadow cast by this light that wasn't one of ours. We both saw it and stopped. Neither of us could place what it was, but then it was gone. Not thinking too much on it because we were cold and wanted to get back inside, we kept walking. Once we got to the girl's house, she didn't answer the knock on her window. When Marcus called her, he got no answer. We had been stood up. By now, my fingers had lost all feeling. There was no choice but to head back to his house. Right around the alley with the light, we heard a dog barking like crazy. Dogs had been barking at us the whole walk, but this one was going absolutely nuts. We could practically hear the slobber falling from its mouth. Marcus said something like, "That dog sounds pissed off." No sooner had he said that than something jumped over a fence and into the alley in front of us. There was no light this time. We hadn't gone down far enough to set it off again. But the moon was pretty bright that night. What we saw still doesn't make sense. It was as white as the snow, but it was shiny. That's what made it stand out. Also, it was on all fours, but even from 100 feet away, it looked like it had hands instead of paws, or something like a hand at the end of each leg or arm. I'm not sure what they would be called. It looked down the alley at us and then jumped over the fence on the opposite side of the road from where it had come. Both Marcus and I turned and went a different way home without saying a word. In fact, we didn't talk until we were back in his house. It was almost 2 by then. Once we were inside, we didn't stop talking about what we had seen until 3. There were some points we disagreed on. For instance, Marcus said the thing was 10 feet long and had rows of sharp teeth. I never saw the teeth, but I figured it was more like 7 feet long. He said it had claws, while I still hold firm that it had hands. Despite the differences, we both agreed it was unlike anything we had seen before. Anyways, the girl texted the next morning and said she had fallen asleep. Marcus and I had forgotten all about her, and all we talked about was the thing we had seen that night. I'm not sure what it was. I do think the shadow we saw earlier on the walk was the creature's. Maybe it was prowling around the neighborhood for something that night. It's been a long time since that happened. I'd be interested in knowing what it was if anyone has an idea. For context, I work night shifts at a grain elevator about 45 minutes from where I live in north central Montana. It's all farmland and empty highway out here. The kind of place where you can drive for 20 minutes without seeing another car or a single light besides your own headlights. This happened around 3 a.m. in early November. I was driving home on Highway 215, which cuts through endless wheat fields. The harvest was done, so most fields were just stubble. But there are still some patches where farmers grew winter wheat. It was one of those crystal clear cold nights where you can see every star. About halfway home, maybe 10 miles from the nearest town, I noticed something off in one of the fields to my right. At first I thought it was a deer, or maybe an elk, because whatever it was tall. It was crossing the field parallel to the road, and it was moving fast, really fast. But the movement was crazy, more like it was gliding than running. I slowed down to maybe 40, trying to get a better look. That's when I realized how big this thing actually was. I'm 6'2", and whatever this was would have towered over me. I'd guess somewhere between 8 and 9 feet, but it's hard to judge distance and size in the dark with just peripheral vision. The shape was humanoid but elongated. The arms seemed too long, hanging down past where the knees should be. The legs looked too thin to support something that size, but it was moving so fast across that field that I could barely track it. There was something about the silhouette that just felt off, like my brain couldn't quite make sense of what it was looking at. What really baffled me was it wasn't completely solid looking. The edges seemed indistinct, almost like heat shimmer, but it was November and freezing out. Or maybe it was just the darkness and my headlights playing tricks. I don't know, but I couldn't make out any real details. Only this dark blurred shape moving through the wheat stubble. I watched it for maybe 10 seconds before it just disappeared into a section of taller vegetation near an irrigation ditch. I sat there on the highway for a minute, kind of rubbing my eyes to make sure they were working, then convinced myself it was an elk or a really big deer, and that I was just tired from working overtime. Lack of sleep does weird things to your brain. I drove the rest of the way home and tried not to think about it, but I couldn't shake this feeling I'd had right before I saw it, like this pressure in my chest, this instinct that something was going to happen. I told my girlfriend about it the next day, and she didn't think I was crazy, which helped, but I mostly tried to convince myself it was nothing and moved on. That is, until yesterday. My girlfriend's brother was over at our place, and around 8 p.m. he took his dog out to our backyard to let him run around. We live on the edge of town, so our property backs up to more wheat fields. He came back inside after maybe 5 minutes and asked if we'd heard anything outside. We hadn't. He said while he was out there, he heard the sound coming from the field behind our property line. He described it as almost like whistling, but not quite. It was more like someone trying to imitate a bird call but not getting it right. He said his dog completely froze, stared at the field, then bolted for the back door. The dog's a German Shepherd and not easily spooked. That was weird enough, but then about 30 minutes later, we had a mail delivery show up. The driver knocked on the door, and when my girlfriend answered, the woman asked if we had livestock or horses on our property. We don't. The driver said she'd just seen something large moving through the field across from our driveway when she pulled in. My girlfriend asked her what it looked like, and the woman got this uncomfortable look on her face. She said it was too dark to make out details, but it was tall, taller than a person, and it was moving through the field way too fast to be a deer. She said the weird thing was how smoothly it moved, like it was barely touching the ground. I didn't say anything to the driver, but this kind of confirmed my fears. My girlfriend looked at me after the driver left, and I know she was thinking the same thing I was. The thing I saw was at least 25 miles from here. I don't know if it's the same thing, or if there's more than one, or what. Part of me still wants to believe it's just some animal I don't know about. Maybe a really big elk or moose that wandered down from Canada. But I've lived in Montana my whole life, and I've never seen anything move like that. I don't know what to do with this information. I've been checking online to see if anyone else around Shelby or Havre has reported anything unusual, but haven't found anything yet. I'm not really scared exactly. Whatever this is, it doesn't seem interested in people. Both times it seemed like it was just trying to get somewhere and we happened to be nearby. But it's unsettling knowing it's in the area. Anyway, I figured I'd post this and see if anyone else in north central Montana has seen anything similar. This happened in 2007, late September in rural Pennsylvania. I was 23 and staying at my uncle's property while he was overseas. The place backed up to an abandoned apple orchard that stretched for acres, and I'd been exploring it during the day, taking photos of the old gnarled trees. One evening, I went out around 7 p.m. to try to get some sunset shots. The light was perfect, golden hour and all that. But I got distracted following this deer path deeper into the orchard than I'd been before, and by the time I realized how far I'd walked, the sun was already down. Not pitch black yet, just that weird blue twilight where everything looks flat. I was heading back when I heard it. You know how there's always crickets or birds or something? It all just stopped, dead silent except for my footsteps. Then I heard branches breaking off to my left. I assumed it was a deer and kept walking, but a little faster now. The footsteps kept pace with me, staying parallel but hidden in the trees. That's when I started getting really uneasy, because deer don't do that. I pulled out my phone for the flashlight, and that's when whatever it was bolted across the path maybe 15 feet ahead of me. It was fast and big. It moved on 2 legs but hunched forward, and in that split second I saw something gray or brown. Definitely not a person. Definitely not any animal I recognized. I stood there like an idiot, frozen, listening to my own breath. After maybe 10 seconds, I heard it again circling back, and I finally snapped out of it and started walking toward the house. I didn't run because I had this stupid idea that running would make it chase me, like it was a dog or something. It followed me the whole way back. I could hear it moving through the brush next to the path, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind. Never saw it clearly again, just glimpses of something tall moving between the trees. Once I thought I saw it standing upright, watching me from behind an old shed at the edge of the property. It was crazy tall with really long arms that went a little past its knees. When I finally got to the house, I locked every door and window and didn't sleep that night. I left the next morning and didn't come back until my uncle returned 2 weeks later. I've tried to figure out what it could have been. Nothing I can think of ever adds up. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. Always the same. That movement went across the path, and the feeling of being watched the whole way back. Anyway, that's my story. I don't really know how to start this, so I'll jump into it. I grew up in a small town in the Pacific Northwest, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and nothing interesting ever happens, or so I thought. This happened over the course of about 2 years, starting in late 2021. I was 23 at the time, living at home to save money while working at a local clinic. My house is in an older neighborhood with these narrow alleys that run between the blocks. Most people don't use them anymore, but I'd cut through one almost every night walking home from my friend Derek's place. It shaved off maybe 5 minutes, and I'd done it 100 times without issue. It was sometime in November, probably around 9 or 9:30 at night. Cold, but not freezing. I remember my breath was fogging up, and I had my hand shoved in my jacket pockets. The alley runs straight for maybe 200 feet before it hits a cross street. And there's this one street light at the intersection that makes everything look kind of orange and washed out. I was maybe halfway down when I saw something move up ahead. At first I thought it was a dog, or maybe a deer, which isn't uncommon around here. But the way it moved wasn't right. It came from the left side of the cross street and moved across the intersection in maybe 3 or 4 seconds. The light hit it full on, so I got a clear look. It was big, easily the size of a grown man, maybe bigger. Pale, like concrete or old bone. It was on all fours, no fur that I could see. The way it moved was fluid but also kind of jerky, like it was pulling itself forward more than walking. The worst part was this feeling that hit me the second I registered what I was seeing. It was this overwhelming sense that I needed to leave immediately, like every cell in my body was screaming at me to run. So I did, I sprinted the rest of the way home, which was maybe 30 seconds at a full run, and I locked every door and window in the house. I barely slept that night. For a long time, I tried not to think about it. Eventually, I mostly convinced myself I'd misremembered, or that my eyes had played tricks on me in the dark. Then it happened again in October 2023, almost 2 years later. This time I wasn't alone. I was walking through the same alley with my friend Jeff, around 10 or 11 at night. We'd been hanging out at his place and I told him about the shortcut. We were talking about something stupid. I don't even remember what, when we both stopped mid-sentence. There were 2 of them this time. They crossed the same intersection, one after the other, maybe 5 or 6 feet apart. Same pale color and unsettling movement. Jeff saw them just as clearly as I did. We didn't say anything for a few seconds, just stood there frozen. Then he said, "What the fuck was that?" And we both started walking fast toward my house. We didn't run, but we didn't slow down either. When we got inside, we sat in my kitchen and tried to talk through what we'd seen. I finally told him about the first time and he got really quiet. He didn't call me crazy, which I appreciated, but I could tell he was freaked out. He crashed on my couch that night because he didn't want to walk home alone. About 2 months ago, my mom mentioned something while we were having dinner. She said she'd seen the strangest thing while walking our dog around 8 p.m. near the same intersection. When I asked her what, she described something that matched what I'd seen almost exactly. She laughed it off as probably being a coyote or something, but I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. I didn't tell her about my experiences. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to scare her. There have been other things too, though I don't know if they're related. Last summer, Jeff's girlfriend told us she'd been walking through that alley alone one evening and heard someone call her name from behind her. When she turned around, no one was there. My bedroom is on the 2nd floor, and twice in the past year I've been woken up by something tapping on my window. Both times I was too scared to look. A few people I've talked to around town have mentioned weird things in the woods that surround us, though no one's ever been specific. It's always vague stuff like, "Don't go out there at night," or "Something's off about that area." I tried to do some research online and found some forums where people describe similar things, but nothing concrete. Part of me wants to go back out there with a camera or something, try to document it, but honestly I'm terrified. That feeling I got when I first saw it hasn't left me. It's like some primal part of my brain knows that whatever those things are, I'm not supposed to be near them. This happened around 2014, give or take. For context, I grew up in northeastern Colorado. Not the mountains, the plains. The flat, empty part that people drive through on their way to somewhere better. My boyfriend at the time, we broke up a few years later, unrelated, and I used to go on these late-night drives when we were bored. There's not much to do out there, so we just cruised the back roads, listen to music, talk, whatever. It was our thing. This particular night was probably around 11 p.m., maybe later. It was a weeknight, I remember that much, because the roads were completely dead. We'd been driving for maybe an hour, just meandering through the grid of county roads and state highways. We passed through one of those blink-and-you-miss-it towns. I'm talking maybe a grain elevator, a gas station that's been closed since the 90s, and a handful of houses. Population signs said something like 84 people. You get the idea. We were coming up on the highway again, about to turn left to loop back toward home. My boyfriend slowed down as we approached the stop sign, and that's when we both saw it. Right in the middle of the highway, around 50 feet in front of us. At first I thought it was a dog, a big one, maybe a German Shepherd or something that had gotten loose. But the longer I looked at it, the more wrong it seemed. It was dog-shaped, sure, 4 legs, a tail, the general build. But it was way too big. I don't know how to explain it. The fur looked matted, not like a stray that's been living rough for a few weeks, more like something that's been out for years. Patches of it seemed thinner in places, and the color was this dark, murky gray-brown, almost black in the headlights, but not quite. It didn't move. This thing just sat in the middle of the highway, staring directly at our car, not skittish or cautious, just watching. My boyfriend put his foot on the brake and we both went quiet. When we finally turned left and the headlights swept over it, I got a clear look at its face. Its eyes didn't reflect, at all. Every animal I've ever seen at night, deer, raccoons, cats, dogs, whatever, their eyes light up in the headlights. It's that greenish or yellowish glow. This thing's eyes were just dark, flat black like holes. The longer I looked, the worse I felt. We drove past it. We had to. It was the only way home. But my boyfriend didn't take me straight back to my place. He kept driving, took a longer route, looped through town and circled back on a different road. I didn't ask why. I knew. He didn't want it following us. We didn't talk much on the drive. I remember him keeping his eyes on the rearview mirror, checking over and over. When he finally dropped me off, he waited in the driveway until I got inside and locked the door. We texted later that night, and he admitted it had freaked him out. He'd felt the same thing I did, that whatever it wasn't normal. Usually an animal will run, or they freeze, or they act aggressive. They don't just sit in the middle of a highway and stare you down like they're waiting for something. I still drive that highway sometimes. I've never seen it again. I'm not someone who believes in cryptids or paranormal stuff. I'm really not. I'm the person who rolls their eyes at ghost stories and thinks Bigfoot is a joke. But this thing, whatever it was, it's made me reconsider. Not because I want to believe, but because I can't not believe. You have been watching Neon Noir, a Radion production brought to you by Trapper Dan, the finest in canned survival food.